Hello, everybody.
Hey, here we are.
Hello.
Hi. Before we jump into the topic, I know we are late. If you are just waiting for us, I know we are late. We had to fix some technical issues, as always, if you want to go live. So we want to start with a short introduction once again, so you can recognize our faces. And yeah, let me share a slide before we jump into the topic. Who wants to Oh, no. Thomas, would you like to start?
Thomas.
Yeah, let me start. So, thank you again, Michael, for the introduction. And yeah, it's me, Thomas. I'm an MVP since 2012, focusing on merger and acquisitions right now, mostly in the architectural phase. And I have a strong background in Teams as well, so which means it hopefully gives us a good insight and discussion perspective also in this live session today. Thank you.
Vignesh?
All right. So, hey everyone. So, my name is Vignesh. I've been an MVP for just 1 year. And prior to this, I had a interesting journey with Microsoft as a full-time employee for about some time. And yeah, been in the industry for 12 years, always done only Microsoft 365, nothing apart from that. And yeah, I've also spent some time with migrations, and I'm here to share my learnings along with my fellow MVPs in this session. Thank you.
Raphael, your turn.
Hello, my name is Raphael, living here in Cologne. I'm MVP for Office Apps and Services also since 10 years, more than 10 years now. Also Azure MVP and Windows Insider MVP and one of these Microsoft Regional Directors. And yeah, I'm the compliance and information protection and legal guy and data privacy officer. So I'm very happy to be here. And let's start and go back to our host. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Good, good. A little bit relaxed now since we started just a minute ago. Yeah, my name is Michael Plättner. I'm a CEO and co-founder of a small company about teams, user adoption, change management. And that's also the topic I'm here for in this migration. I have seen a lot of different companies doing it wrong with doing nothing. And I had interesting discussions with my fellow MVPs. So we decided to start here with this series and go a little bit deeper into the different topics. But what is the actual current topic for today? Well, before we go too deep into the technical stuff like compliance and Power Platform, I would like to start with a more general topic which affects the everyone on your environment. The users, the personal data user. And this is a little bit structured with three main pillars. So first of all is your personal data, like in OneDrive. The next one is kind of personal but shared data on a Microsoft Teams. And of course, email is death. I know, but it's not. So we have to talk about the mailboxes. All right. Who wants to pick up the first topic? So not you. Who wants to select the first topic? Shall we start with Thomas?
Yeah, maybe let me get an overview in total before we have the expert, because the OneDrive expert is definitely Vignesh. But one part just important where we need to talk about first is if we talk about personal data, we are talking about the data which is associated with an account anyhow sitting in Azure Active Directory and which is tied and aligned to those or to this account. Now we see this and start migrating into or merging, which is the migration into the other tenants. Yeah, let's see how that works. That means we have OneDrive. OneDrive actually has APIs, or it has even a newer technology just for relinking it in the mailbox environment. The same, we have an API, EWS, I guess everyone knows this. It's also an upcoming preview anyhow for relinking mailboxes into a new tenant. And oh, please come fast. And then we have Teams, and everything sucks because Teams has the slowest API Microsoft has ever built, which means we can create Teams, but when we talk later about it in detail, we will see how fast that actually is. And by the way, maybe I guide you through a nice tiny experiment. But having that in mind means all those data need to be at the same time available on the target. So you cannot have maybe a little bit Teams, a little bit Mailbox, and a little bit, or maybe half OneDrive, because then you don't know where to work. Or you work in both, or you don't work. That means let's see how we can actually tackle this and how we can address it so that at least the user can start his own journey in the new tenant. Maybe I give back to Michael to Vignesh.
Yes.
So yeah, I like the. Of course, I do, because it's user adoption focus, right? I like the people centric focus here, and I just thought about the description you gave, Thomas, because I thought that sounds a little bit. We should start with the hub for modern collaboration with Teams, but then I thought, but when I try to share a file, I use an email, maybe, if it's outside of my company. And then in the best case, I used OneDrive. So let's talk about these different topics separately. And if we have the expert here in the call for OneDrive, please, Vignesh, let's start and enlighten us with OneDrive. What
Sure,
was the
sure.
trickiest point?
Yes, and thank you for calling me as an expert in OneDrive for business, because, and I understand the reason why Thomas is coding this, right? So if you look at OneDrive, right, it's to be honest, in the entire Microsoft 365 plethora of services, OneDrive is my favorite because, I mean, of course, you get 1 TB of storage just for yourself. Do you think any other service is going to give you that, right? But the problem is even that, because if you look at it, when you're giving so much of storage space to your users, I mean, 1 TB is good. Today, you can even have 3 TB or 5 TB or whatever. Users just get crazy and they start putting, excuse my language, every damn thing inside it, right? It could be their vacation videos, their marriage videos. I mean, everything, every literal thing is going into their OneDrive for Business. And when you're looking at migration, right? This, I would say that this is the bigger chunk. This is the bigger volume, because there is just, you're talking about every single, I mean, if he's a very mature user, he knows which one should be into his OneDrive for Business, which one goes to SharePoint, and which one should sit in his hard drive, right? But then today it so happens that it becomes like your backup solution in most of the companies. If you look at, I remember 10 years back when I started in organize, there was solutions such as Iron Mountain, and there was a lot which were used as backup solutions, right? But today OneDrive is the one which is being used as your PC backup solution, which means the enormous amount of data keeps going into OneDrive, and all these need to move seamlessly into the target. And when you look at these kind of migrations, of course, there is a lot of data, which means a lot of cleanup is required before you do this. It doesn't make sense for you to move everything. You really need to start by asking the users, hey, I see about 100 GB of data in your OneDrive. Do you really need all this 100 GB? Because now is the time for you to go ahead and clean up, because the more amount of data, the more amount of time it's going to take. Now, as Thomas was pointing, thanks to Microsoft, now we have this new cross-tenant migration tool, which is really, really great in terms of its speed and performance. It's literally, I would say, 10 times faster than any other third-party tool in the market, simply because it's using the Microsoft's backend infrastructure, right? They just sort of unlink it from the source, and they sort of relink it once again in the target, which is very quick. But there are also certain problems in this tool, which maybe we'll be talking later in this session. But to begin with, what I would recommend is for any OneDrive migration, always begin with a proper discovery. It's good to start that way, because I can tell you 100% sure that not all the data that needs to be moved to the target. I'm pretty sure that there is a good amount of cleanup that users can do, and only the relevant information should be moved. And as I said, not your personal videos, your marriage or vacation videos. I mean, maybe they can go to your personal OneDrive, which is part of your Hotmail subscription, but not to OneDrive for Business. So users need to clearly understand which one has to go where. What's your take on that, Raphael?
Thank you very much. You bring up a very interesting topic on our discussion table. How much gigabit or terabit a OneDrive needs to be? Because if it's smaller, it is better for data privacy, for all of the topics around security. So if there are not a lot of data, you can't get hacked or moving or shared outside of the company. On the other side, you have a lot of storage for personal usage, and you can use it and you need it because uploading your videos, uploading your pictures from OneDrive, everything goes to OneDrive. Also, Teams content is moving in chat. When we have a group chat, it goes to the OneDrive. So this is the first question for you. For tenant-to-tenant migration, what was your out of this perspective was your limit for storage? Is it 1 terabyte, 500 gigabit? What do you say? Very fast. Thomas.
It was 1 terabyte.
Only the number.
1 terabyte.
1 terabyte? Vignesh?
I would say keep it even more shorter, like 500 gigs.
Yeah.
Or 100 gigs.
500 gigs?
Yeah, or 100 gigs. I can even say 100 gigs.
Michael, for adoption, 500 gigs is a mad. Yeah. Michael, what do you say for? What do you count?
Michael, you're on mute.
Okay, you are on
sorry.
mute.
Yeah, sorry. For adoption, I would say just keep it under 100 gigabyte.
For compliance, 100 is enough because we have to think about what do you do with a OneDrive. With a OneDrive is a personal folder, so nothing for actual movies, music, cinema, or whatever. So only for temporary data in a company, and so it is a better way to have not so much space to move it to another location, to move it to another tenant. So 1 terabyte is a maximum out of my 1 terabyte is maximum, not 5 terabyte, but out of a compliance view, and this is the second topic, Vignesh, and also Thomas, you said, it could be a very interesting one. Which data do you have in your storage? So you talked about cleaning up your OneDrive. Yes. And I have 2 migrations where we said we don't move to OneDrives. We don't migrate.
Let me actually get it from there. So it's one part. We also did a lot of analytics, right, for OneDrive.
Yeah.
And you find typically 3 different kind of categories. You find a lot of people with very, very less data, most likely even below, sometimes I would say below 10 gig. That's nearly nothing. That's most likely even the majority. A lot have even less, so that means less than 200, 300, and then you find the rest. And that is scaling everywhere. So you find them even on certain execs. I don't know, because we should not have a look in, but they have sometimes 5 or 7 terabyte. But that also brings up another topic, which we probably at the beginning have completely forgotten. So if we talk about personal data migration, for sure, we have to have a tenant-to-tenant comparison. So not only based on all the compliance rules, but also based on just simply the sizes. So that means if you have a tenant which have the standard, like 1 terabyte, you're migrating it into something which is maybe 100 gigabyte only, then you need to see what you need to do with the data which is overflowing. You cannot turncat it, right? So that's also one part, which most likely when we start talking about the technical part, we forget about the compliance and the legal stuff and the other stuff around tenant-to-tenant comparison, which is, yeah, just quite some hassle actually to figure it out and find it out. And then you have a discussion, which is the next topic. Again, it's a political one.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And adding to Thomas's point, right? And this all happens at the very early phase where you do the discovery. And one interesting thought which Thomas brought up is the difference in settings between the source and target, right? Because as he said, the source has, let's say, 1 terabyte as a given storage space for all the users. And when you look at the target, the company is giving only 100 gigs. Now, that is a huge difference, right? Now, let's say a user in the source, he made use of, let's say, 500 gigs in the source. And now we are trying to push that data into 100 gigs in the target, which means there is a huge difference. So it's not going to work that way. So all this kind of, we would say that the configuration or settings difference between both the tenants, it has to be analyzed well in advance. And let's be honest, each and every single organization is different. No two organizations are the same. They have their own business reasons. I've seen companies who have just kept everything wide open, right? You're doing some security assessment, you ask, why is this setting turned on? And they would go, well, I don't know, that's how it was, right? So, and then you have seen organizations where they are very, 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 they don't really want to keep everything open. They don't really want to allow OneDrive sharing. And even if they do, it's only with the organizations who they normally collaborate with. So all these settings, all these core nitty-gritties, they need to be compared, and only then you could do a migration. It's just not about moving the data. It's all about understanding these differences across tenants, and then you plan the migration. Yeah, so that's my take there.
Indeed.
And that's also from my point of view, we always talk about the different aspects for users. But before we start, we have to rethink also the administrative part. The best description was the policies right now. It's not only the sizes, it's a policy when you're sharing any one links. What is with a retention for any one links? Do you have a retention? Do you enforce sign in anyway? Do you enforce guest accounts? Do you have expiration date? Something like that, especially for OneDrive. But also for all your personal data. So for example, what is your time when you say for mailboxes when it goes to the archive? And also for teams, do you have any retention policies on your teams, saving or deleting any information on this? And this is also important to understand, and the only way you can get this is to clarify this with the administrative team, so with the administrators on each tenant. And don't assume anything. It's always bad, especially if you start with user adoption. You assume everyone knows how it works. The same is for the technical perspective and administrative side.
There is something what you find on a lot of customers, especially if you talk from the XX, which
So you say
everyone? No data left behind. That's an interesting statement, by the way. And at the beginning, they say no data left behind. Then you start explaining what it means. Then they came up, some data left behind, but actually not. So which means at the end, you also migrate each and everything. Beside of Teams. And even then they figure out, okay, if that project takes 2 years, just only for Teams, then they say, okay, we need to find another solution. And there is even one talking about later again. But I cannot emphasize it enough. So which means before we even start doing and drafting any technical solution, just get together and have an expectation management. So what do you expect should be there? Why it should be there? Is this only IT who decides it? Is this legal department who decides it? Who is actually having any kind of voice in this kind of project? If IT is it, they always say everything, but it's not necessary. So which means, and then they have different expectation. If you also say something leaves behind, then also the users come up. Yeah, then I do not work in the target environment. I work still in the source environment because there I have some data. And that's always in every single acquisition and merger project or merger and acquisition project, completely underestimated, totally forgotten, and most likely everyone is doing it wrong because they put in technicians and do not put in advisors. And that's causing it to fail.
Raphael, want to add something?
And yeah, and in this connection, it is very interesting that often when I got a question, okay, what we do with the personal data of the employee, I often asked, which data do you mean? Do you mean his personal private data? Okay, there's nothing what we want to mix. We don't want this migrate or we don't do anything with this. It's deleted and it's not a right part for OneDrive or personal inboxes or whatever. Then the next one is which high sensitive data do you have in your OneDrive? And often I said, okay, I have a mixed culture. So everyone knows for governments, important data, sensitive data is SharePoint, the storage, or we have an SAP system or whatever. But everyone has it in their OneDrive. I make a lot of these Know Your Data workshops. I have 2 today. And in these workshops, every time I see the most sensitive data are in OneDrives, not in SharePoint, not in Exchange. And second part is Exchange. So we all know we don't need this data because it's personal data, and personal data only some pictures and no company stuff or company content. At the end, everything is in OneDrive and in the personal mailboxes. And we all know the personal mailboxes is the archive for everything.
Mhm.
Especially Microsoft 365, where we have 100 gigabits and more to store everything. So at the end, I have some projects, for example, for insurance companies said, okay, we delete everything because it's personal data. We don't need it. We don't migrate. On the other thing, you can't miss it because that's what Thomas said. We don't leave data behind. We need this data. At the end, you need some of these data. So the first thing is when you said, I don't migrate, you have 3 months of how to tell the people where they have to move their data. And often it don't works. So at the end, you can't say, I don't migrate. At the end, you wait, Thomas, 6 months. You have to pay for OneDrive for personal data because no one knows which important data is in this of 30 days or only 60 days for which data we have there. And this is what I get very, very often in these projects. I said, okay, personal data, we work with the mailbox, but OneDrive, we don't migrate. And everything of other personal data, okay, personal chats and whatever, we don't need. We move, we only migrate the mailbox. And at the end, 6 days, 7 days behind, oh, I need something in my OneDrive. What do you need in your OneDrive? In my OneDrive, yeah, there is the Excel sheet from our last project, and I miss it to migrate it to Teams. Oh, okay. Okay, we have a backup and you can get the data. So that's very, very often. So I think we all can agree we can't say we don't migrate anything. So, but the second thing is, and I will bring it on the table. I have some company customers that said, okay, personal data, we don't migrate, but we give the people the chance to migrate it for himself or for herself. So your OneDrive migrated to yourself because of the hope when they migrate the data from their old account, they have their old account with at Microsoft.com connected with OneDrive to their new account. So they only need to drag and drop that they clean up their data or they delete data. No, they only take everything, put everything in the new OneDrive and works like before. And so what do you think? Automate migration for OneDrive and their personal data in the OneDrive, or let the user migrate? Michael or Vignesh?
I think Michael is the adoption guru. He might
Michael
have.
is the adoption.
Yeah.
I can try to answer this, but there's no true story behind that because you can tell the users clean up, do only migrate what's necessary, what's really important. If you don't have any technical limitations, they just I wouldn't say they don't care. That's wrong. They care, but they are not able to clarify for their own experience. So is this worse to keep up the file which was important 2 years ago in a project? Shall I keep it or shall I delete it? Is it worse to migrate the data just from the last 5 months? Is this an actual project? What about the other topics I haven't touched for, I don't know, 2 years? And this is also the tricky point where you cannot set up a specific rule just for something like, please only migrate the data which is older as 6 months, 1 year, 3 years. You cannot just put in a policy like this in the communication also. You have to explain that also from when we talk about Teams, especially, you have some data which was shared in Teams on your chat, not in a Teams team, but in a personal chat or in a group chat, that it's also stored in this on this OneDrive. So you have to explain, think about the data, go over the data, and in my ideal world, I would say in the target environment, we have less storage available as in the previous. I know in the ideal world, because then they are forced to at least think about it. But yeah, it's not always the same. So I have seen the same experience, or I have the same experience as Thomas said. You have different kinds of people. One is just using nothing, the other one is a regular base, and the other one is on an extraordinary level.
Let me maybe
So
add something quickly before, because Raphael, I guess that's the important part. Whatever we have talking, or what we are talking about at the moment, it's pretty interesting in just reducing something. But again, if we are in a M&A, so merger and acquisition, we have to definitely see somehow there are legal binding contracts as well behind. So which means, and if they buy the company, by the way, they buy the data. Regardless if it's personal or not,
correct.
whatever, it's all. And if there are legal cases coming up, you cannot leave anything actually behind again. And then whatever we have discussed is nice, but actually we have to also include those folks who triggered the M&A, and then we have to see how that works.
Yeah,
That's totally correct. Sorry, one sentence. That's totally correct. If you have these company, they brought every time, I need everything, and we clean it up later. So we take everything, because most of the data are the important things they brought, because there are the knowledge, because no one has a right knowledge management system. So Michael or Thomas, correct, but at the end we dream of a perfect world.
Yeah.
It's the same like in the chat. They said, okay, we have a policy that no personal data of the employee will be stored or proceeded. At the end, we have personal data, because I don't see a company with all of the employees, they don't have personal data in their OneDrive. It's easy. You make a picture with your phone, and it's automatically linked to your OneDrive, to your business OneDrive, because you have more storage for free. And it's linked. Okay, you can take technical limitations that you can't upload it, or you delete everything after 30 days. But at the end, yes, out of legal reason, I see a lot of sentence in the contracts. We brought everything and we take everything with us. So Thomas, that's correct. If you don't have it, then you can clean up, but we will see. But for the discussion, Thomas or Vignesh, sorry, I don't want to disturb.
Yeah, that's I totally get it. And I see an interesting question in the chat which said somebody wants to set up the tenant-to-tenant. I see, Thomas, you have just shared your book as well, right? So, and as I was talking before, so as I said, first of all, once again, thanks to Microsoft. Now, this tool is really great for somebody who has been dealing with third-party tools for many years in the past. I know, the agony of working with these third-party tools is it's a lot of time consuming. I mean, there is nobody to complain here because, that's how the API is read. Now with this cross-tenant migration tool from Microsoft, right? So as I said, it makes use of the backend infrastructure from Microsoft. Your OneDrive is just, it's just unplugged from the source and it is just replugged once again in the target, right? So setting up this tool, to your question, it's quite easy. That is per user license. This needs to be licensed in the target. And then there are a couple of PowerShell commandlets where you need to set up this trust thing, and you need to make sure that all the tenants are compatible, and then just need to go ahead and run the PowerShell, and it starts migrating. But that is a problem also here, and it's clearly documented in Microsoft, and we did face this in our project, right? So if both the tenants are not in the same compatibility level, then that's it, you can't migrate. I mean, that's how it is, because we need to understand that on the back end, these are all shared infrastructures, which means it's Microsoft who's going to patch all these backend SharePoint farms. It could be CUs or patches, KBs, whatever. And for you to make use of this tool, the source and target should be on the same patch level. And for whatever, because it's not possible for you to migrate from a higher patch level to a lower patch level. It doesn't work. So, and this is the case with on-prem as well, right? So if your tenant goes into such scenarios, then you simply can't migrate. So this is a very big headache with this tool at this point. But given the time the other third-party tools are taking, I think this 48 hours or 72 hours is something which is okay, you can live with. But this tool, it's amazing. It migrates everything, all the versions, everything just smoothly moves, and it's great. I would recommend any organization to go ahead and use it. Thomas, your take on that?
Yeah, let me maybe step into it, since I was also involved in this private preview testing it. It is simply, so to speak, it is awesome. Everything comes with a but. Let me first quickly talk a little bit about OneDrive migration if you do it via the API. So you have a throughput limit, which is actually somehow between 250 megabyte and 10 gigabyte per hour, depending on the size of your files. So which means you can't calculate. You can do preloads, but it also makes it complicated if you add versionings, what Vignesh mentioned already. So that means if you do it over the traditional way and you migrate a lot of data, maybe all, then forget it about to calculate when a user is ready. You can maybe migrate 10 users a day, then you can at least have a kind of estimation logic behind. Furthermore, if you do it now with the cross-tenant move tool, so to speak, we call it sometimes mover. It's not the same mover as we see, but the cross-tenant migration tool makes it fast, makes it reliable, but it's unforeseeable when it fails if there is a tenant incompatibility. If you move it across different geolocations, that will be even increase the likelihood of incompatibility problems which we have. So that means, again, you prepare everything, you prepare mailbox, everything is there, everything in sync. Now you start and say the user maybe 1 or 2 days earlier. Most likely you start even with the communication pretty early. Your migration date is day X. Now it's coming closer to day X. Everything looks fine. You say it is day X, incompatibility mode. You're not migrated. Or you migrate him, say, well, your OneDrive follows a little later. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after tomorrow. Yeah, that brings us again to the next problem, which we always have. And that means, again, it is painful and there is nothing to sync. So which means whatever we do with all those 3 data, it is most likely still an unsynchronizable migration for user data, or maybe you roll back and tell the user, oh, sorry, it didn't work last night, but maybe you will be added on another day. So what we do sometimes, if we migrate 4 days and on the 5th days, we hope and pray that we can just migrate all others. Or maybe we only migrate on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so that gives us some room in between to start migrating something in between. Even if you can talk with Microsoft and say, would you please just get the entire SharePoint farm into a kind of patch it probably together mode, which is also existing. But again, also this is not 100% reliable. Now we are talking about something, you do something to users which is not predictable, not reliable, and you will definitely be shouted as the partner who is doing it from the client. Of course, there is no solution at all which can guarantee you a smooth, punctured migration. And if you even do something with legal hold, you have another problem, because that could be maybe a topic also for a little later. But it is to me a nightmare. And if we're talking about tools, every single tool on the market is using the same API. Some have better salespeople and tell you they use a faster API, which they don't. I had that a couple of times. So the customer stopped the entire project. They said, there is another vendor. I said, amen, yes, bringing him. We figured out, great, you use the other magic word because you spelled API backwards. So now it's an IPA. Actually, you should drink this, not used for migration, right? And that means you, whatever vendor you have, some maybe have better administrative tools to manage it, have better logging to manage it. Yes, that's somehow something which you could use. There are still some tools which are not the most best, yes, because their performance hasn't really evolved, but still using the same APIs. So there are tools, but you need to try it. So everyone, and in every situation, in every tenant size, and every kind of structure, it looks different. And there is no such thing that I can say the company with the Q at the beginning is the best, or the company with S, or the company with A. So now I'm confused a little bit, as everyone knows what I'm talking about. I don't want to make any kind of ads for any vendor, because it is your personal choice, and you need experience with the tools, absolute experiences. Therefore, go with Microsoft wherever possible, because at least that's stable. And I hope that every other vendor is actually integrating the Microsoft tools on technology in their tool, which means double licensing. But again, if you at least can control it centralized and not having a bunch of people sitting anywhere offshore in the world, which maybe you can use because they might be cheaper, but it also will be very difficult to actually incorporate it in a kind of migration plan. So it's not impossible. As I said, it's always going to work. But there is a lot of, beside the technical and the tools and the political things, there's a lot of going on. And sometimes I was just migrating into Microsoft Cloud from on-premises. That was all easy, rather than getting involved into a merger and acquisition, which is political, technical, so many things to deal, too many parties who want to say something, because not forget, there is a source and target side fighting about the job which should stay. So which means you need to have a very, very thick skin, and sometimes you lose.
Yep. Makes sense. Should we start talking about mail also? I think we've spent quite a good amount of time talking about OneDrive. Yeah.
I'm not sure if we should start this or keep it for the next session, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk about, I've already said a little bit about it. As you may are aware, OneDrive, my gosh. OneNote, never say files in OneNote.
OneNote is a part of OneDrive.
Never ever. OneDrive is also in the back have some files for Teams in a chat and in a group chat. Do you have any experience with best practices or recommendations handling like this? For example, you said maybe in one scenario you don't want to migrate a ton of information. You don't want to migrate everything. How do you handle this specific data?
As I say, I'm looking like a squirrel again. I'm blowing, or a hamster, or whatever. What that means is now it becomes so ugly and complicated. The data is shared between the participants of group chat. which means it is in OneDrive. It's in your personal OneDrive. So business data, again, in your personal OneDrive. That topic we had. Now, again, you cannot migrate chat messages. Done. Maybe we're talking somehow a little bit longer, but this API, okay, to the thing I promised, by the way, just go into a group chat or let yourself invite and say, include chat history. And then you try to scroll up to the first message. That is the speed of migration because it's exactly the same API. And since it takes maybe half a day until you scroll up, if that group chat was running for 2 or 3 months, you know what I'm talking about. And now it comes. Within these group chats, you have a link to the chat document in each and every one. Now you need to migrate the messages, which you actually can't, as I said. So that means what we can do. This information is closely being lost. And we need to swallow that. The only chance we have, if you want to just collect some informations here, it's a super secret technology which no Microsoft partner is allowed to use, which means, okay, first, migrate your personal OneDrive as we discussed before. Secondly, let Microsoft PSS, or the professional service guys, come in and let them do a so-called Azure Storage Lake migration. What does this mean? They have a tricky thingy something. They don't tell you how that works. They don't give you access to this special API. But for 10,000 users or 20,000, they roughly export all messages in less than 2 weeks and have it in a kind of XML format. They can segregate it and give an XML file to each and every user, which is a nightmare if you don't have something to search in, and then you will find a link. And if you're happy, you can identify on this link which document it was. You cannot even relink it again. If you think you really want to do it with a chat migration for 10,000 users, keeping those links will roughly take you per 10,000 users, and that is exponentially 2 years. So that means we are talking here not only about you need to pay the consultants and the people is doing it, you need to pay Microsoft additional licenses. I'm talking here, the chat migration costs you multiple $1 million if you want to keep it consistent.
So at the end, don't migrate the chat.
Don't migrate chat. Let it export. If you need data consistency, let Microsoft export, put it aside. In case you have something legal, you have to use this. There is no other way.
So at the end, a policy of deleting every chat after 30 days could be a very good policy.
In fact, I wanted to come to that, Raphael. See, because when you look at the market, you see a couple of organizations who are very structured. Maybe the nature of their business, or for whatever reason, they have proper retention policies for Teams chat. They said after 2 weeks or after 30 days, it's gone. It doesn't matter how important it is. I'll be wiping off your chat messages once in 30 days, which means your chats will be keep on being deleted, right? So in that case, you don't have the headache of, you're not even worried about your Teams chat, right? And then on the other end, you don't have organizations doing this because they want to take advantage of this persistent chat history which Teams offers, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you look at Skype to this was that wow factor when we saw, oh, all my persistent chats are there. I can always scroll back and look at it, right? So in your opinion, what would you recommend? Do you see an organizations to use retention policies and clean up their messages? Or do you think, well, that is maybe today Teams chat is the way to go. People should stop relying on emails or other forms of communication. So Teams chat is the way to go. So maybe they need to start using Teams chat, and retention policies is not something that. So what is your take on that?
Yeah. For me, if you see this, I'm every time telling everyone Microsoft Teams chat is not enterprise ready. Because, sorry, it's not enterprise ready. Microsoft Teams in this part is not enterprise ready, because for enterprise ready, compliance, data privacy, backup, storing, archiving for financial sector, you can't do this with a chat item. Sorry, it don't works.
Yeah.
No, it don't works really. You can use keep it or whatever and make backups and e-discovery. That's another part of the tale of a book. I talking about enterprise ready, full enterprise ready. And so I said no, because I said Teams is only a temporary storage and temporary work for projects, for groups, for everything. So you work and the personal chat 30 days, 35 days, and everything that would be fine for me. I see companies that are 60 days and then deleting everything because for tenant-to-tenant migration is better, for compliance is better, for data privacy, yes, and it's better because no one can delete a chat.
Yeah.
So you can't delete a group chat. You only can make it invisible, so it don't work. So automatically deleting policy. And what I find is what is a heavy challenge is the chat and the information in a Teams group, in a Teams channel chat, for example, share channel, and we have private channel and all of this. And for this, when you have a deeper look, exactly, you need a consistent migration to another team because you need it. But on the other side, and it's also it costs you a lot, and that's the same for Yammer, also for Viva Engage. Now you have only one company for migration. We have the same. So at the end, you need systems for exit and IT emergency cases. You need to prepare it with deleting policy. Don't do the German way. Don't do the German way and carry everything, and you need everything, and every chat message is important. No, or it's the same. You don't need all of these data. For example, Ignite. Who of you stored all of the data and slides and said, okay, I want to rewatch the sessions? Every one of us. How much session do we watch? 2 or 1. So no one needs it. It's 3, okay, 3. So it's chat, it's temporary, and very good comment. It's not a compliance tool. No, if you have it, you have the email. And now I'm important at the topic email. You have to migrate personal email. I don't discuss this because there are some important information in it. For example, you have sheets for your consultants, and you send it to you and not to this central storage or to this team mailbox. So you have these important information often also in your personal data. So you have to migrate it. But chats and all of this, sorry, no. And at the end, you see it costs you millions of dollars or euros to pay for it, to pay for the mistakes you do at the beginning. Because often, and Michael, users and companies start with this, using Teams, using group chats and everything, don't delete it. And after 5 years, you start, okay, now we start with deleting, because in one of these streams on YouTube, on LinkedIn, from these nice 4 guys for the Musketeers, we heard these important things, and now let's start. It's heavy to start now, or Michael?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. If you can always start pretty restricted with whatever you start with. If you lift the restrictions, the people are happy. If it really was a annoying restriction, and if not, no one cares actually. But if you start pretty restrictive, then you can tell the good story. You raised the limits, you lifted the restrictions, something like that. But the other way around is horrible, because then you have to face exactly or almost the same situation as in the migration. If you think about the scenario from Raphael right now, 5 years of conversation is stored in Teams, and no one told them. And I like the comment we've got in the chat here.
Yeah.
And if no one's told the people, if you work in this, it's not persistent. It looks like it's persistent, but if you have to make a decision, don't document it in a group chat. Put it in a document, put it in a safe space, put it in something you really keep for a long time. And to say it loud and clear, this is not Teams actually. This is a real data. You can use a mailbox like a decision email or something like that, or you put it in documents where you can put it in an archive just to document all the steps and all the decisions you made. But you have to clarify that, and you have to think about this at the very beginning. And when I think about the migration from one tenant to the other, then you may have some issues, because it's also something you have to train the users. You have to tell them. Now we start with a blank history. You have a new account, there's no chat, something like that. Please, we want to keep it. That's the best chance. But if you have another tenant open for everything and save it one more time, 5 years, I keep the fingers crossed that there is no other technology coming around and there's no other stuff you want to hop on. So chat is not the best way to save it.
Yep.
Okay.
A
Anything
consistency
you
I
want
get.
to add here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Or should I?
Go for it.
Okay, as I said, because the consistency actually there is even complicated. What we have now discussed, and see it also, even when we take or talk further, when we talk about collaboration data, but we have guest user access. So that means, like, if you're now even using your guest user access and you are as a guest in the Teams, you chat something outside of your environment. So that means all these compliance topics, which we have in the legal topics, are rather complicated, which is all an agile, nice approach of working, but there is no such thing, especially if we see it from the German side or certain European side at least, where you can work a little compliant, so to speak. Of course, everything is going to actually be a haywire, and it's all fine as long as you don't need it. Upon you need it, you experience the problem.
All right.
So, summary.
Summary.
Summary at the end. Summary at the end. 10-to-10 migration personal data is a lot of governance questions, a lot of who owns the company questions, strategy questions in this part. And at the end, we're talking about enterprise readiness of it. At the end, we come every time to this topic, Vignesh.
You
It's
bring it
crazy.
up every time.
But it is it. And we can say, okay, it's important to migrate the mailbox. At the end, chat and OneDrive, you have to think about it. And OneDrive, maybe yes, because Teams store data there, because so you can't say we don't restore or we don't migrate the OneDrive. So you have to look at the OneDrives. Correct? Did I miss something?
No,
Yeah,
makes sense.
you definitely missed
Adoption.
you definitely missed to explain one more time, and you couldn't say it as often as possible. It's horrible to migrate all this stuff. It takes a while. Sorry, it takes ages, not like a while, like 5 minutes. It takes ages, like really, really months before you can migrate everything. And especially chat, we learned that in a previous session already in the overview. This is horrible. And yeah, with the API for OneDrive, it's not getting better. So thank you, Raphael, for the first summary. I just wanted to bring out the pain point here. I think I should stop with English and maybe talking for today. And but before I start with shutting up my mouth, I would like to bring attention to our questionnaire. We just created a form. It's a pretty easy form where you can put your questions in preparation to our live stream, so we can pick up your question if you cannot make it to the live stream. And so please feel free to send us some questions. And We will continue with the personal data because we have not finished everything from especially the mailbox part. This will be the part for our next live stream in 2 weeks. And yeah, thank you from my side.
Before Easter, the Easter egg we hide next time. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.